Hi learners, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a very important topic for all the UGC NET aspirants, and that is the 5 most important literary theorists that you need to prepare, that you just cannot miss while preparing for this paper. The reason I say that these are the most important ones is actually based on my deep study of all the past year papers. I actually have sorted and compiled all the previous year questions and separated them into topics and also divided them by authors and writers and theorists. All this you will find in my online course. So, as I was compiling and sorting these questions for literary theory, these are the theorists which I found were the most asked ones. That is, the questions from these theorists, they were the most in number. Okay. So in this video, I wanted to share my findings with you, for those of you especially who are preparing on your own, so that it may help you guys as well. Okay, so let's start. The first one that I found to be the most important one is none other than the Swiss linguist called the father of modern linguistics, Ferdinand de Saussure. He is a seminal figure associated with structuralist theory, someone whose theories and concepts you just cannot afford to miss. Okay, really, trust me, बहुत ज़्यादा questions आते हैं यहाँ से. He has talked about many important concepts, one of which is langue and parole. In fact, there have been so many questions from this concept itself, as you can see somewhere on the screen here. Now, one of the questions that they would ask would be something like, that choose the correct statements with regard to the binary pair langue and parole introduced by Saussure, and then they would just give you the options and then you'll have to choose the combination. So this was just one of the questions that was asked from here. Now, briefly talking about structuralism, it's a way of understanding the world by looking at the relationships and structures that underlie everything. In language, this means looking at how words and sounds are organized and related to each other to create meaning. Okay. Now, Saussure also introduced 2 very important concepts which I just told you, langue and parole. Now, langue refers to the entire system of a language, like its grammars, like its rules and the structure. Like, think of it as the underlying blueprint of a language that everyone who speaks that language shares. Like, it's like the rules of a game. For example, in cricket, everyone knows the rules about how to play, what the stumps are for, how runs are scored, etc. Right? So langue is similar. It's the set of rules that everyone who speaks a language knows and follows, even if they do not think about them consciously. That is what you call langue. Remember cricket wala example, then you'll remember langue. On the other hand, we have parole, and that refers to the actual use of language in everyday life. It's how we speak, how we write, how we communicate. It's a specific way a person uses langue. So again, going back to that cricket example, parole would actually be an actual cricket match. Each match is different, just like each conversation is different, but they all follow the same basic rules of the game, that is langue. So langue is the whole system of a language, its rules and structure. Parole is the actual use of that language in real life situations. Okay, so understanding these concepts, they help us to see how language works, both as a system and as a tool for communication. That's about Saussure. Coming to the second theorist, we have Roland Barthes, the famous French literary theorist. He is another very important figure who has actually given some interesting ideas. One of the super important things that he has talked about was actually the death of the author. Okay, so Roland Barthes, he talks about the idea that when we read a book or watch a movie for that matter, or enjoy any piece of art, we often think about what the author or creator meant. Barthes argued that we should stop doing this. Instead, we should focus on the work itself and what it means to us as readers or viewers. Barthes says that once a piece of art is created, it belongs to the audience, not the author. This means that the meaning of a story or a poem or a movie for that matter, it comes from how we interpret it, not from what the author intended. Okay? In other words, the death of the author means that the author's intentions and the background should not influence how we understand the work. Let's again take an example, and I'll take an example from Bollywood this time. Think about movie Sholay. Okay, now many people love this movie and they have different interpretations of its story and characters. Now, some might see this as a tale of friendship, others might see this as a classic action movie, and some others they might focus on the social and the political messages. Now, according to Barthes, instead of asking what the director Ramesh Sippy meant to say with Sholay, we should focus on what the movie means to us. Maybe you see Jay and Veeru's friendship as a reminder of your own friendships, or maybe you find Gabbar Singh to be an interesting character because of his unique personality. Okay, your interpretation is what matters, not the director's original intention. Okay, so in simple terms, this essay by Barthes, The Death of the Author, that encourages us to focus on our own interpretations of a work of art rather than trying to figure out what the creator wanted to say. It's all about how the work makes you feel and what it means to you. Okay, now Barthes also talks about other concepts as well, which again I take up, which I discuss in detail in my online course. I talk about not just the theorists and the concepts which are mentioned here in this video, but then I also take up several others as well. You can find the list of all the topics that I discuss in the syllabus section of my website. You can also download the app. The link you'll find in the description box. You can enroll in the course if you too want to be a part of my student community. You can visit my website theankitajain.com. You can also call or WhatsApp me on the number showing above. You'll also find all these details in the description box below. Now, coming to the third important, highly important theorist, we have Raymond Williams, a brilliant cultural theorist who gave some of the most incredible insights into how culture works. He has written some very important books as well. Make sure you know his bibliography along with the dates of publication as well while you are preparing for the UGC NET paper, because again this is something they have asked in the exams before. Now, talking about one of his most important concepts is structures of feeling. Again, they have asked us in the exam as well in the past. Do not forget to prepare this concept. Now, this concept, it might sound a bit complex, but don't worry, I'm going to break this down for you in a simple language. So what do you mean by structures of feeling? Raymond Williams, he came up with this idea to describe the shared values, the emotions and the experiences of a particular time and place. These are not just the big obvious things that we all notice, but the more subtle, the everyday feelings that influence how we see the world, how we interact with each other. Okay, so think about the 1990s in India. Comment below to let me know if you are a 90s kid or you were born after that. Now, anyhow, coming back to our example, think about the 90s in India. It was a time of significant change. Economic liberalization was opening up the market, and there was a surge in consumer goods and media. There was a feeling of hope, excitement and optimism about new opportunities, right? All this was noticeable. These shared feelings and attitudes among people form what Williams would call the structure of feeling of that era. I'll give you one more example. Imagine the feeling of in Indian households during the late 1980s and early 1990s when television shows like Mahabharata or Ramayana were broadcast. You have to ask your parents about this, okay? Families would gather around the TV. Streets would be empty, and there was this collective sense of anticipation and reverence. This shared cultural experience and the emotions tied to it represent a structure of feeling. What's interesting about the structures of feeling is that they're not static. They change over time as the society changes. Okay, so this is one of the important concepts by him. Coming to the fourth important theorist we have that you have to prepare is Foucault, Michel Foucault, somebody that we study under post-structuralism and deconstructionism. Among many things that Foucault discusses, one important concept that he talks about is discourse. In simple terms, discourse refers to the way we talk about and understand things in society. It's not just about language, but about how certain ideas and knowledge are formed, they're spread and how they are maintained. Again, let's take an example from an Indian context. Consider the discourse around beauty. The dominant discourse might emphasize that, fair skin, slim bodies and certain facial features they are heavily influenced by media and advertising, right? तो एक preference रहता है. However, there are alternative discourses that celebrate diverse body types, skin colors and features, challenging the dominant ideals of beauty. इंडिया में dominant ideal क्या है beauty का? Fair skin, पतला होना, right? So to sum up this discourse, the way we talk about and understand things in society, that's discourse. It's about how knowledge is created and maintained, and it's closely linked to power. Those who control the dominant discourse, they can shape what is considered true or normal. Again, this is a very important concept of Foucault, which I've just very briefly mentioned here, okay? So I talk about all these things in detail in my online course. Coming to the last most important theorist that we have is I.A. Richards from the field of new criticism. He developed a method called practical criticism, which actually fits really well with the ideas of new criticism. Now, practical criticism is all about reading a text closely and carefully, close reading, okay, and then interpreting that text based on what's in the text itself without considering outside information like the author's biography or the historical context for that matter, okay? So there's a very famous experiment that he had done, that he conducted, wherein what Richards did was that he gave his students a poem without telling them anything about the author or the background. The students then, they read that text and they wrote down their own thoughts and interpretations based only on the text that they had read. Now, this way they could see how the text itself creates meaning. That's exactly what they do in new criticism. They focus on close reading of a text, not concerning themselves with the author's background or his intentions or his influences, right? What is there in the text only, that's what matters to them the most. So let's say that you are given a poem, like for example, How Do I Love Thee, Let Me Count the Ways by the very famous Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Then you would only focus on the text that is in front of you. What that text tells you, how it's written, the form, the imagery and all those things. You would not be concerned with, for example, the fact that it was written by Elizabeth Barrett Browning for her husband Robert Browning. I actually have a video on the text on How Do I Love Thee. Plus, I also talk about Elizabeth Barrett Browning's and Robert Browning's love story in one of my other videos. I leave the link to that in the description box below, so do make sure to check that out as well. Now, Richards believed that by focusing on the text itself and our own responses to it, we can better understand how language and meaning work. This method, it helps us to see that different people can interpret the same text in different ways, which is a very important idea in new criticism, okay? So practical criticism encourages us to think deeply about the text itself and to understand that our interpretations are influenced by our own experiences and perspectives. It also shows us that there is not just one correct way to read a text. Meaning can be flexible and it can be open to interpretation, exactly what I encourage my students to do. This is what new criticism is, and this is what I.A. Richards found as a result of his experiment, okay? There are again so many important things that Richards had talked about, and I've barely scratched the surface here. If you want to study all these theorists and concepts in detail, then you can also join my online course by simply going to my website, theankitajain.com. You can also call or WhatsApp me on my number, which you will find in the description box below. Also, do not forget to subscribe to the channel so that you do not miss out on the content that I keep on posting here, because all this is going to be really very helpful in your exam preparations if you're going to prepare for this paper on your own. So always keep a pen and paper with you ready while you're listening to these lectures by me, okay? So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon in the next video.